a daytime operation, but a lot of evenings we have things going on here. So we're kind of like a friendship center, but we're not a friendship center. Like we have like beading, we have pow nights, we have drum making, rattle making, ribbon skirt making. Like we do all kinds of stuff like that in the evenings, and sometimes during the day as well, because we also do a lot of work with seniors. So seniors like to keep busy during the day, so we do that kind of stuff. So the reason I like to share that is because when people are moving to Edmonton, what they're giving up is community. And what they're leaving in community is lack of opportunity. So they're coming to city for work, they're coming for school, they're coming for maybe schools for their kids, whatever. But they're leaving community and they're coming to this big, scary, confusing place. And we have all of these programs that go on in the evening to help people build community again, so that they meet people while doing these things. So that even goes true for these guys and gals, mostly guys, some gals, who are getting out of incarceration. So I always tell a story about Matthew. So we met Matthew in the fall of 2019. And we do a lot of work with the Edmonton City Police. We have been since day one, like since 1994. We always have someone on our board of directors from the Edmonton Police Service, and like we've just done a lot of partnership work with them. So one of our cops that we know really well, he's jumped around units, like different divisions within Edmonton Police Service. And at that particular time, he was with the Behavioral Assessment Unit, BAU. So BAU is responsible, you guys probably even have this back home, when you see someone's scary mugshot on the 6 o'clock news, and they say, you know, Joe Blow's getting out of jail, and he still might be a danger to society, so we're letting you know he's getting released. So the BAU unit here, that's what they do. They make those determinations, how they're going to support these offenders once they're released. And if they're worried about them, they'll make a decision to put them on the 6 o'clock news. So Matthew is one of those guys. He had a bald head with tattoos all over it. He had tattoos on his face coming up to here, tattoos all down his neck. And he was huge, just built. And he was mean looking. And my friend Greg, our cop friend, he brings him to Robbie and says, you know, we got Matthew, he's getting let out. We need him to, you know, find a place to live. We need him to have a job. Like, we're going to be monitoring him very closely. So they brought Matthew in and they started doing this intake with him. And Greg got a call, the policeman got a call. And he says to Robbie, I just can't take this. I'm just going to step in the hall. And she's like, yeah, go ahead. So he stepped out in the hall and there was this big pause in the room. And Matthew said to Robbie, are you afraid of me? And Robbie goes, should I be? And they laughed. And once they laughed, they were okay. And so they just kept on doing this intake. So from the time he first made contact with us, and we talked about the things that he needed, a place to live, a job, all of those kinds of things. We got him a job, we got him a place to live, we got him work boots so he could get at that job and have the equipment that he needed. But what else Matthew needed was, on the inside, he pretty much grew up in jail. And on the inside, he knew the rules, right? He knew all the rules, but the rules in there are not the rules out here. They're very different rules. And so he came to see our new in town people every day for coffee, every single day. And he needed to learn how to live the things we don't even think twice about. He needed us to tell him what those rules were, right? So an example is, he would come in one day and he would say, you know, my foreman on the job site, he's 25 years old. He's like, fucking punk, doesn't know nothing. And I just want to smack him in the face sometimes because he orders me around and he's kind of mean about it. And Robbie said, well, you can't punch him in the face, because if you do, you're going to go back to jail. And he's like, yeah, I know. So, but he needed to like hear that, right? He started to have a relationship with a woman out here. And he needed to know how to do that. He said every day she thinks I'm cheating on her. But I'm going to work and I don't know how to convince her that I'm going to work and I'm not cheating on her. So they were giving him relationship advice. How do you make her feel like she's the only one? And so, you know, these were the things that he needed every day, was to touch base and say, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? I feel like doing this, but I'm pretty sure I shouldn't do that. So this is in the fall of 2019. Spring of 2020 comes around, and our funder for this program, one of them, said, we're going to do our annual report this year, and we want to feature Bentero and have a success story. So do you have a success story you can share with us, because we want to put it in our annual report? And so we thought of Matthew. So, but we said, we're not just going to tell you Matthew's story, it's his story. We want to make sure it's okay with him first. So we went to Matthew and said, Thunder wants to hear a success story, and we want to tell him your story. And he laughed, and he's like, I've never been called a success in my whole life, and you want to call me a success? And we said, yeah, we think you're a success story. He's like, okay. So they came and they took professional pictures of him, and we did the story up, and he's in their annual report. And then March 2020 happened, and we all know what happened in March of 2020. So we were like, you guys, everybody was told to go home. We were running around to every Best Buy in town trying to buy laptops up everywhere because we had to send our workers home. So Matthew didn't have us anymore to come every day for coffee. So the next time his woman accused him of cheating on him, he punched her. And he punched her. And he punched her. And the police were called, and the police took him away. They couldn't hold him for very long, so they had to let him go back out. But his life just went like this, you know. And it was a real lesson to me, a really hard lesson to me about how important we are to the community that we serve, that we're not just an employment program, we're not just a housing program, we're not just a parenting program. Like, people need to connect to us. So we weren't allowed to even crack open our doors until June of 2020. But once the province said we could do that, we opened our doors again. And so it's a very big building. I told somebody outside it's 43,000 square feet of space. And we have like 28 programs now, but back then I think we had about 22. I said to our programs, the housing program will have one staff here every day. You know, New in Town will have one staff here every day. You don't all have to come, but one of you needs to be here, because if someone needs New in Town, I want them to see a human being. You'll wear a mask, we'll do everything we can to keep you safe, but I want us to be here for people. He wasn't the only one. He ended up passing away in the spring of 2020. And he passed away from suicide. And it was terrible. He passed away from death by cop. So he basically made the cops kill him. And that's how he chose to end his life. And he very, thought it out very, meticulously. He had everything planned out. He had all his plans, the keys to his car were going to go to his sister. Like, he really thought about what he was going to do. And I've told his story so many times, A, because he gave us permission to, and B, because I want people to know, when you do this kind of work, it's not a 9-to-5 kind of job. It's all the time, right? And I don't stop being me at 4:30. I'm still me until 8:30 the next morning. And if people need something here, we need to be able to find a way to make it happen for folks. And we still have good work-life balance, if you can imagine that. Bentero started in 1994. Next year will be our 30th year. I came to them in the spring of 1995, just straight out of school as a youth worker, and I wanted to work with Indigenous youth. We had a group home we were just starting up at the time, and that's how I got my foot in the door. The lady who started up this organization, her name was Shauna Seneca, and her husband Brad was from, what's the name of that reserve? Where's my dad? Did he leave? He's not even in here.
Door for us.
Yeah. Well, aren't they all here?
Yeah.
Anyway, he's probably visiting. London, Ontario area. It starts with an N. It's a band near London. Muncie, yeah, not N. It starts with an N. That's where he's from. And he came to Alberta for the same reasons we came to Alberta, for opportunities. And he ended up meeting Shauna. Shauna was not Indigenous. She's Scottish on both sides of her family. But she found her home in our community. So she found her home in our ceremonies, and she just lived her life When I met her, I was so convinced she was at least Métis, because that's how she was. She walked it, she lived it, she was just 100% like, you know, in her heart and in her mind, she was Indigenous. So her and her husband started up this organization, and she was like my mentor in the work that I do. Our roots are in Indigenous youth, and one of the things we very first learned from working with those first group of young people was that they also had people around them that were struggling. So that's how we grew, right? We started hearing about your little brother who you caught smoking pot for the first time. We started hearing about, you know, how your dad didn't have a job and you might lose your house. And we started hearing about how you guys never have enough food on the table. Like, we started hearing the stories from our youth about the things that were going on at home. And so we started programs up to meet those needs of people who were around these kids that we were serving. The other wisdom that Shauna had for us was that if we couldn't look at the young people as if they were islands, like, just, we can't just serve them, we have to serve who's around them, we also couldn't look at ourselves as an island. So Bentero from very early time decided